Hello and good afternoon or good morning to you all, wherever you are listening from. My name is Paula Gonzalez. I am Senior Manager of Membership Growth for AAPA. Welcome to AAPA's 6th member-hosted webinar of 2021. I am pleased today to welcome AAPA member and presenters of today's webinar, ABS Group. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Marcia Lee to introduce herself and her fellow speaker. Marcia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you, AAPA, for hosting us today. We're really excited to be here and talk about cybersecurity for ports and terminals. We'll be discussing current Coast Guard regulations for MTSA regulated facilities and specifically discussing the Navic O120 guidelines. And since the deadline for that is coming up, we'll also be providing some resources for how you can kickstart your process and addressing your cyber risk management. I have the pleasure of co-hosting today with my colleague Brian Shijari. So I'll give a little background on myself and then pass it over to him to introduce himself. My name is Marcia Lee. I'm the Manager of Business Development for Cybersecurity Services at ABS Group. My background is in Marine. My degree specifically is in Naval Engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology. Prior to my current role in business development, I was an engineer on our cybersecurity operations team, where I was mainly conducting assessments and helping clients develop their cyber risk management programs for commercial and government fleets and their facilities. So for about the past 5 years, I've been working in this industrial maritime cybersecurity space. Brian?
Thank you very much, Marcia. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, wherever you're located. I'm Brian Shijari, and I'm a cybersecurity assessor with ABS as well. I've been with ABS for about 2.5 years now, and in my time here, I've led several initiatives for port-wide cyber studies, major cybersecurity assessments throughout the nation. I've authored a few cybersecurity policies as a contractor to the U.S. Coast Guard. And I've also helped guide some national AMSC efforts to collaborate a collective cybersecurity initiative for port facilities, not only here in the area that I'm in, but throughout the country as well. Before I was at ABS, I was a facility security officer and an assistant emergency response manager at a major MTSA regulated facility in the Southeast Texas region for about 4 years. And I was able to combine a lot of my knowledge in cybersecurity and marine safety into that job. So those of you that are dialed in, sitting in an FSO job, I have sat in your shoes for quite a long time. And before that, I was a county deputy emergency management coordinator in Southeast Texas, where I lived for a short time. And from 2002 to 2015, I was an active duty member of the U.S. Coast Guard, and I've worked in a multitude of roles when I was active duty, including marine safety, facilities inspections, vessel inspections, incident command, cyber warfare, and intelligence. And I'm still serving as a reservist in the Coast Guard. So thank you very much, Marcia.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so Brian and I are going to go ahead and turn off our cameras so that we can focus on the content of the webinar. So go ahead and do that. And we will get started. So for those of you who may not be familiar with our company, we are ABS Group Consulting. We provide a wide range of safety, reliability, and risk solutions. We are a subsidiary of ABS, the American Bureau of Shipping, which is a classification society. I'm sure many of you have heard of ABS. Our cybersecurity team within ABS Group has been operating for several years now. Being that we are a subsidiary of ABS, we have a large marine client base, including commercial and government fleets in ports and terminals. We've also expanded into other industrial environments such as oil and gas, power gen, manufacturing, etc. Our solution focus mainly on the operational technology or OT side. So technology that controls moving parts, things that push, rotate, pump, heat, push, pull. In the last few years, we've really seen the need for proper cyber risk management of these industrial control systems as we witness cyber events that threaten physical operations, such as the recent Colonial Pipeline attack. I'm sure most of you have heard of. And these events present not just financial consequences, but safety consequences to people in the environment. So naturally, as a safety company, we made it our initiative to educate our clients on the importance of OT-specific cyber risk management. That being said, we do operate on the IT side, helping companies align their business networks and OT networks to the same standards. We work a lot with government information requirements such as NIST 800-171 controls, and now CMMC, which is the new model that government contractors must adhere to. So before we get started, I'd like to go over just some administrative points. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to end your questions using the dialog box, and we will circle around and read them at the end. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and it will become available, I believe, by both AAPA as well as on our website, and just allow a couple of days for that to get processed. So as I mentioned before, today we'll be discussing what compliance to the Navic 120 looks like, and Brian and I will provide some additional information and resources for managing cyber risk at your facilities. Our hope is that you walk away from this webinar understanding what you have to do to meet the requirement and how you get there. In terms of agenda, since we are a safety-driven company, we always start meetings and events with a safety moment. After our safety moment, we will kick off the discussion with a brief review of what the U.S. Coast Guard Navic 120 exactly is and what it says. And from there, we will provide information on available grant funding that facilities can use to meet the requirements, and then go over examples of project scopes that you can execute using that funding. And lastly, we will wrap up with some additional resources and open for questions. For today's safety moment, we would like to remind you of the importance of safeguarding your sensitive security information, or SSI, which refers to security information specific to your facility and its systems in this particular situation. For today, since we are going to be taking questions, we ask that you be mindful to not include any of your facility's SSI in the questions or chat box. I understand you might want to describe a scenario or use example in your technical questions, but just try to avoid specific references. And if we see a question that we think does include SSI, we will not be addressing it. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to kick us off talking about the Navic.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Appreciate it. So a lot of us have probably heard of Navic O120, or as the Coast Guard's calling it, the Cyber Navic. Now, a couple of years ago, the Coast Guard did come out with a draft version of what eventually became Cyber Navic 0120, and that was called Navic O517, and it was in draft mode. It came out in May in 2017, and it was very IT heavy, and it had some really good information about protecting OT systems. But the biggest roadblock was that it wasn't really speaking to the individual FSOs. There was no FSO verbiage in it. There was no language that you could hand to anybody within your facility security pyramid, hand it to them, and they could somewhat start to understand what their role was in cybersecurity. And if we go to the next slide, please, Marcia. So in Navic O120, which came out in February of 2020, which was about a year and a half ago, the Coast Guard decided to author this Navic in a way that it would speak to FSOs, to auditors, and to even the Coast Guard inspectors. Because if you think about it, over the years, the Coast Guard is still trying to navigate its way into finding what does a cyber inspection look like. Whenever they go on board a facility and do either a spot check or they do their annual inspection, what does that inspector look for on the cyber side? And then likewise, on the flip side of that coin, where is the FSO going to pull their knowledge from and understand, give themselves a baseline so they can likewise be inspected here in the coming years and expect what the Coast Guard is going to inspect? And so the Coast Guard authored this Navic, which is really pulled from 3 core references within 33 CFR 105 and 106, 105 being facilities and 106 for offshore platforms. And we're already familiar with these laws, because after 9/11, the Coast Guard came out with MTSA regulations in 2002, which stated, you must implement certain security measures at a facility. And we later came out with Navic 0303 that addressed that. But with regards to cybersecurity, what the Coast Guard did was they said, okay, we already have these laws written down in 105.305 and 106.305. Let's try to translate this into cybersecurity. And so they took these three aspects of CFR that you see listed here, and what they did was they translated into cyber language. And I'll go into a little bit of that in a minute. But the three that I really want to harp on right now are the FSA requirements, which is the facility security inspection, which is, analyzing vulnerabilities that you may already have with your radios, your telecommunications equipment, and even your computer systems and networks. And this is in the existing 105 regulations. And then next they said, well, let's also pull that into the FSA. So they're encouraging, or they're asking facilities now rather, to update, revise their FSAs, their facility security inspections, and their facility security plans to address any of these issues that they find on the cybersecurity side and these vulnerabilities. And then next, they're also, how do you establish and maintain a good cybersecurity program, or any security program for that fact? In 105.220 and 106.225, these regulatory requirements tell a facility to conduct drills and exercises which test the vulnerabilities that you may identify in your FSA. It also tests the FSP, or it could exercise the entire FSP. So they took that and they also threaded that into Navic O120. And then lastly, audits and security plan amendments. We already have to go through an annual audit at a facility. And, if you have to conduct a FSP amendment, then, that's already in the regulatory body. So Navic O120 helps you translate these three really important aspects that are already in existing verbiage. And then lastly, the Coast Guard came out with a message, all coast message about a year ago that stated, we want this done by September 30th of 2021. Now that said, everybody thinks, well, come October 1st, that's going to be it for me at a facility. But in reality, they're asking for facilities to do their best by September 30th. So that doesn't mean on October 1st, the Coast Guard is going to come down with a hammer and say, well, you haven't done a cyber assessment, or you haven't addressed some of those vulnerabilities in your FSA, or done an updated FSP to reflect these vulnerabilities. They're just asking that facilities start to try to make a collective effort to start to, get this done soon. Next slide. So where do we start? What does Navic O120 do? Again, it takes these existing laws that we have in 105 and 106. It maps it over into Navic O303, which is the implementation for MITSA requirements that we already have to do. And then it translates it into its own meaning, which, for cybersecurity is derived from the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, which is the recommended framework that the Coast Guard recognizes as a standardized practice to use in facilities. And so that's derived, of course, like I said, from the NIST CSF or the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, but also too from NIST Special Publication 800A2. And I won't get into that too deep, but that's a recognized standard throughout industry to protect industrial control systems and their associated critical functions. So for example, if you have an industrial control system at a facility that may run some of your storage tank capacity, flow of a product to and from shore, that's what that's referring to. But also too, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework on that same page addresses everything that you would find in a basic security program, everything from physical security into cybersecurity. And that's why the Coast Guard recognizes it, because it's simple, it's effective, and it is actually language that an FSO could understand. If you guys could, sit down and read it in the Navic the way it's translated, it's pretty easy to translate into stuff that you already know. Next slide, please. And so these are the key 15 points that make up Navic O120. These are terms that you probably may already recognize. And they did this intentionally because, like we said, the Coast Guard wanted to take existing verbiage and translate it over to cybersecurity. It's really difficult, especially in a security program at a facility, to introduce new terms, new meanings, things like that. Because if you try to do that, you're going to start losing people really quick and you're going to cause a lot of confusion. So the Coast Guard standardized everything into existing verbiage. So I'm not going to go through all of these in great detail, but there's a few that I would really like to just sort of touch on for you in case you may have questions on it. And if you haven't picked up the Navic and read through it, this is all in here. But just a couple that I want to go through is, of course, first of all, number one, facility security assessments. We already have to do these every 5 years. We already have to, make sure that, if we have to amend our security footprint, that we have to go through this process again. But what the Coast Guard's saying now is if you have any cyber vulnerabilities, and that can range from anything from physical security issues, from not locking up some of the closets that maybe some of these servers are in, or maybe some technical vulnerabilities, like maybe you've had a ransomware attack, or maybe you don't have any cybersecurity training at your facility to help you understand what your cyber vulnerabilities are. The Coast Guard's asking you to go through and include that in your FSA now. And a lot of people ask me, well, how do I figure that out? And again, that's why the Coast Guard recognizes the NIST cybersecurity framework as a good standardized system to use to help you identify some of those vulnerabilities that you can include in your FSA. And the best way to do that, an FSO can't do it alone. There's just no way in the world. We always highly recommend that, the FSO team up with the IT staff. If you have a dedicated cybersecurity body at your facility, then definitely team up with them too, because they're going to be your first stop shop for this stuff. And they're going to be the ones that really intimately understand the networks within your facility that may or may not run some of your critical systems. Number 4, drills and exercises. Oh, go back just real quick. I want to touch on a few more. So drills and exercises, as a former FSO and even as a former Coast Guard facility inspector, one of the things that I really honed in on at a facility was drills and exercises. In the security realm, we're used to doing drills every 90 days, and we're used to having to do our annual exercise, not to exceed 18 months. But injecting cybersecurity these days is very important for the FSO to team up with their IT staff to do. And a lot of people ask me, well, what does a cyber drill look like? Because we already know what a physical security drill looks like, but what would a cyber security drill entail? And I always tell FSOs, it doesn't have to be complicated scenarios. It could be something as simple as you found a door to the server room unlocked. What do you do next? Notify the IT, notify facility management, maybe conduct a security sweep. Does that involve the ITs, checking the system to make sure there wasn't any unauthorized access? And so that's what that's referring to. And I won't spend too much time on any more of these, but then number 14, your FSP, the Cyber Annex. We encourage facilities not to write cybersecurity directly into an FSP, because if you do that, you're going to have to worry about amending it every time something changes, or if something happens or goes down, you're going to be held liable for it. So we encourage facilities to include it as either an annex or a separate cybersecurity plan that, if you do it as a separate plan, it's fluid, it's a living document. You can take it and update it whenever you want and implement it throughout the facility. And again, that would be heavily in your IT's wheelhouse. But you as the FSO, if you go through the NIST cybersecurity framework, you're going to find your spot in there in your niche, especially if you look at Navic O120. Next slide. So where's the Coast Guard at? Where have we been in the past year? And I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. The past year, every time you log in to CNN or Google or something like that, or if you get an alert on your phone, you're going to see cyber attack. That's just an increasing issue. In 2017, we saw some random ransomware attacks on several entities throughout the United States. But over the past year and a half, 2 years, we've seen a significant spike in cyber attacks. And what's even more upsetting is we've seen a significant spike in cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. I won't get into the recent Colonial Pipeline. I'm sure that we all read the news and saw the news on that. But throughout the United States, there are, small attacks going on every day, every second against major U.S. critical infrastructure, to include us in the maritime industry. So the Coast Guard has recognized this, and throughout the years, they've been responding to just about every major cyber incident that relates to critical infrastructure if it has a maritime nexus. And so the Coast Guard's been putting out MSIBs, or Marine Safety Information Bulletins. And just as a quick sidestep, in your local area or your local captain of the port zone, wherever you're at, sometimes a port security specialist will put out a PSIB, or a Port Safety Information Bulletin. So definitely stay on top of that if you're not, liaisoning with your local port security specialist at your captain of the port zone. But just to highlight a few that the Coast Guard's put out this year, in 2019, they recognized that there were several cyber attacks that were impacting several day-to-day facility operations at MITSA facilities. And late 2020, they put out another MSIB regarding, the need to protect OT systems and control systems at a facility. And again, those are those smart devices that may control the flow of a product to and from shore, maybe from a pipeline onto your facility, or even some of your physical access control systems. And then lastly, we talked about SolarWinds earlier this year. I'm sure everybody heard about it, and the Coast Guard, again, they recognize that as a threat to the maritime infrastructure. So if you haven't stayed on top of these, we highly recommend that you stay in touch with your local captain of the port office. And, if you haven't read any of these MSIBs, we definitely highly encourage you guys to, go through this and familiarize yourself with them. And again, liaison with your local PSS or your area maritime security committee in your captain of the port zone to get these on a regular basis if you haven't already. So beyond the requirement, what does cybersecurity look like 5 years from now? A lot of people ask me that, and it really boils down to a lot of things. Is obviously safety. We want to try to avoid a TSI, or a transportation security incident. That was the whole point of MITSA whenever it was put into place in 2002. We want to make sure that we prevent a major transportation incident from occurring on the waterway. But in 2002, we didn't even really know what cyber meant. We couldn't even spell it. So now we recognize that as a new threat. But beyond the requirement, besides a safety incident, it's all about reputation. The Colonial Pipeline incident was, I'm sure, pretty damaging to that company. And likewise, if you think about it, if the same thing were to happen to a major port facility, that could probably, if you think about it, it could probably do maybe the same sort of reputational damage to that facility. And so, just keep that in mind. It goes beyond security and safety requirement for those of you that are in the private sector. At a facility, emphasize safety within a cyber program. It's not just, again, it's not about, security, but, this could be a safety incident. So that could be as simple as, at your facility or on board a vessel, if you have one of those safety moments, which, we used to once a month, and just get up there and say, hey, don't click on things that you shouldn't. If you don't recognize it, call the IT as soon as you can. Don't put that on the back burner. Just a quick 30-second safety moment related to cybersecurity, believe it or not, will go a long way. If you just mention it a couple of times, it becomes part of your facility security culture, and then next thing you know, they'll be reporting things to you. And again, September 30th, that the deadline that the Coast Guard recognizes, it's almost here. We're already almost through 2021. But again, the Coast Guard's not going to come down, like a hammer and say you have to do this. But just get that going at your facility as quick as you possibly can. And then, lastly, Navic O120, they make very clear that performing cybersecurity assessments, is going to be a requirement from now on. So start including that into your FSA. If you have an FSA coming up, drag the IT into the assessment and try to get them involved in that process. And that also goes for your third-party audits. If you haven't started to get the IT in the room sitting down with the FSO and facility management with the operations personnel, get them in there and let them go through this as well, because it's important that your IT staff begin to understand what you as an FSO does, because it's going to help the ITs help you implement Navic O120. And then lastly, be competitive. It's great to say that you've met all the check marks for the Coast Guard, but at the same time, if you get that cyber culture established in the facility, your operations staff, your ITs, your facility personnel, everybody in the facility is going to start helping you out with cyber if you start making it an initiative. And that's going to make you a very good competitive facility within, whatever industry you're in. So, get that culture started, break the barriers, and get that bridge built, between security and cybersecurity. And that's all I have on that. Thank you, Marcia.
Thanks, Brian. So now that Brian has gone over what exactly this regulation is, I'm going to go ahead and discuss 2 grant funding programs that you might want to take advantage of for these cybersecurity initiatives. These grant funding opportunities don't have to be used specifically to address Navic requirements, but of course that tends to be a key driver for most facilities. So the first grant funding opportunity is the Port Security Grant Program, which is administered every year by FEMA. This grant opportunity is available, but not limited to, port authorities, facility operators, and state and local government agencies, really any facility subject to an AMSP. And the real driver for this grant is going to be port-wide security. So any cyber initiative, specifically is more in the OT side, that can demonstrate this is going to make a decent spot on the list for funding. And I say OT side because, again, that relates to physical safety for people, property, and the environment. In terms of the process, the application is usually due every spring, usually around April or May. And so unfortunately, for this year, that deadline is behind us now. Applications have already been submitted, and I think they're going to announce the funding pretty soon, as it's usually awarded in around July or August. So if you are looking to apply next year, I would recommend you look out for that application posting around February. That's usually when they post it, and then they recommend 4 weeks to be able to do that application. So just make sure that you schedule to that accordingly. And with these types of grants, there do tend to be cost shares. So if you get grant funding, you can't use it for 100% of whatever projects you applied for, but it can cover, a good majority of the cost. For this program specifically, it's a 25% cost share for public facilities and 50% for private facilities. But there is an exception to that rule. So if you are a private facility and you can show a proven port-wide benefit from your project initiative, then you can get that cost share down to 25%. And if you want to read more about this grant funding opportunity, you can go to the FEMA website, and they actually post the notifications of fundings there, and they have them for the last few years, so you can see what those typically look like. The second grant opportunity is the Port Infrastructure Development Program, which is administered by the Maritime Administration, or MARAD, which is a Department of Transportation agency. The list of eligible participants for this grant is fairly long, so I'm not going to go over all of it, but for this audience, probably the most important group in that list is going to be owners or operators of a facility or collection of facilities at a port. This grant is not security specific like the other one, but rather focuses on general safety, efficiency, and reliability of port operations. And again, when it comes to OT security, that very much contributes to safety and reliability of operations. So some good news is this grant actually is currently open in the application process, and the applications are not due till July 30th. So you do actually have time to apply this year. You have a month, and it's recommended that you leave yourself 2 to 4 weeks to do the application. So plenty of time if you go ahead and get started on that right away. For this grant, the cost share is 20% for those who are applying. There's also some exceptions to that rule. So if you're interested in that, again, go ahead and look further into that. You can find more information about this grant on the MARAD website, and the grant application itself, the NOFO, or the Notice of Funding, is posted on grants.gov. And something I want to just bring up is, for both of these grants, cyber has really become a high priority item. Some of you may be aware of the National Maritime Cyber Plan that was issued by the White House last year, which includes specifically prioritized initiatives for port cybersecurity specifically. And so this, coupled with the recent attacks that have threatened national infrastructure, are playing a big role in approving funding to these projects. And so it is seen as a priority, the cybersecurity for these operational systems. Okay, so in order to apply for this grant funding, you do need to have an idea of what you're going to use it for. You need some kind of project scope. We find a lot of facilities who are newly looking at these industrial cybersecurity requirements don't know exactly where to start. They have a little trouble getting over that initial hump. So we have prepared some example scopes of work that you can use to improve your facility's cybersecurity posture, and you can use to kind of kickstart your cyber risk management process. So we have five project examples. Naturally, the first action that we recommend you take is to conduct your cybersecurity facility assessment. Not only because this is a direct Navic requirement, but also because it really is the proper first step in addressing your cyber risk. The objective is to evaluate your current cybersecurity posture, but also to take stock of what existing security requirements you already have in place that should be considered when you're integrating your cyber risk management. And for this scope of work, we've provided this simple 5-task plan. The first step being an introduction and kickoff where you get buy-in from leadership, and also make sure you're bringing in the right stakeholders for the process. It's very likely your FSO will be leading this assessment process, but you should also consider involving other personnel, specifically from IT, operations, and HSQE. So once you have the right parties involved, then you'll need to plan which recognized framework you're going to use, such as NIST, in order to develop some kind of checklist that the assessment will be based on. And task 3 is the actual execution of the assessment. That will be done through a series of document reviews, as well as interviewing key personnel at the facility. Those assessment results are compiled in a report in task 4. And then the last task is to develop a roadmap of actions which will address the gaps that were identified in the assessment report in task 2 and 3, or task 3 and 4, my bad. So some key considerations, as I mentioned, make sure you're involving, the various stakeholders, operations, IT, HSQE. Other things to consider when you're looking at the scope of systems that you're including in the assessment, you are going to want to focus again on OT, operational technology, since that is where the safety consequences lie. But you can also include IT, or rather you should include IT where it meets OT. So where you see that interface, and that's part of the assessment process, is identifying where OT meets IT and how is that boundary being protected. And lastly, as I mentioned before, the assessment served not just to, check the box, but also to evaluate what current physical security standards and controls do you have in place, so that you can consider how cyber fits into that umbrella. I think a lot of facilities get intimidated by this whole process because they think, oh, we have to develop this brand new risk management program, but really you're looking at what you already have in terms of security and just making sure that cyber is included under that umbrella for these critical systems. So if you've already done an assessment, then the next initiative that we would recommend you do is address your cyber risk management in your facility security plan. As Brian mentioned, this is also part of the Navic guidelines. This is also a 5-step process that we've developed. The first step being that assessment that we just talked about. So once you've done that, then you want to work on developing the plan. We recommend that rather than integrating cyber into your existing FSP, you create what we call a cyber annex. This way you won't have to go through the whole amendment process for the whole FSP when you integrate your cyber, and also for the future, you don't have to worry about doing that as you update your cyber risk management plan. And so for the plan itself should include your risk assessment. That's really what your whole risk management program is based off of. It should include your incident response plan, and your roles and responsibilities, as well as general access policies that you have in place. So once you have that plan put together in an annex, it's updated, then you're going to want to implement mitigating controls. And these mitigating controls should be determined based off of your risk assessment. They should be prioritized based off of which critical risks you identified in your risk assessment. I think the Coast Guard has made it very clear that they're not expecting this to be just a paper exercise. They want to see evidence that you are actually following the plan and actively trying to mitigate your risk. So this implementation process is very key, and that is really what's going to lead to your compliance. So one of the easiest ways to demonstrate that you are actively mitigating your risk is through properly training your personnel. So we've made this third scope of work an incident response training initiative. As I mentioned before, your incident response plan should be included in that cyber annex or FSP update. The objective of this training development is to ensure that you are properly implementing that incident response plan by informing your personnel of the process through training. So in terms of tasks, first you're going to identify what is the best training method or medium for your personnel. Is it going to be an in-person classroom instructor-led session? Is it going to be an e-learning that personnel can do on their own time? Or is it, are you just going to send around some material? What is the best medium for you? And we encourage you to, in this process, look at existing resources. There are some operational cybersecurity resources available online. You'd be surprised at some of the really good quality YouTube videos that are out there that serve these purposes, and OT cybersecurity campaigns that exist. So look at resources, look at what seems to be the standard material for encouraging cyber hygiene. And then you're going to want to outline your objectives for the training and specifically identify what information from your facility cybersecurity plan should be included in the training, what information from your plan should your personnel be familiar with and be able to repeat back if asked. And so throughout this process, of course, you'll want to make it an iterative process, get feedback, edit it as needed before it's rolled out as a formal training. Some key considerations during this process, you can look at these following questions and keep them kind of in the back of your head as you're developing this training. One, what processes are executed once an incident is identified? So your personnel should be able to answer this. Once they've completed the training, they should be able to understand who's going to play what role if an incident is to happen, and they should be able to tell you what resources exist for the incident response process, where are they, and when are they available. And lastly, consider using knowledge checks just to test the effectiveness of the training and really make it stick. So the next scope of work, Brian is going to go over, and it is going to be cyber incident drills and exercises. Brian?
Thank you, Marsha. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, as Marsha said, training, getting this culture set up is really important within a facility, especially throughout the chain of security there. So, one of the best places to start, and I always tell FSOs this, is do a drill. Team with your IT staff and do a simple scenario. It doesn't have to be, again, anything very complicated. It can be something simple. So, there's a scenario here that I came up with. It was just a disgruntled employee stole some information, and this was neglecting a patch upgrade. So it could be something as simple as that. Teaming up with your ITs and saying, hey, is this realistic? And then going through and then doing the full after action report on it. What did you learn? Things that, you noticed that worked and things that didn't work. Notifications that were made, practice your notifications. In your FSP on the physical side, you have certain people that need to be called in the event of suspicious activity or suspicious incident. So within your facility, have those same types of notifications laid out on the IT side for a cybersecurity incident or an event. Actions taken, if there was anything done, again, what worked and what didn't work, what's a good practice for you guys? Make sure you write all that down and document it. Who was present? Again, we always encourage the FSO to start working directly with the IT on this stuff, because this is obviously not going away anytime soon. So, we're encouraging FSOs to begin to learn what the IT, what they do on a daily basis. And the IT likewise should understand what the responsibilities of the FSO are through Navic O120. And that's a really good bridge for you guys. And take this, obviously, and file it, and this can count as your cybersecurity drill. A lot of ITs on a regular basis at bigger facilities owned by big corporations will conduct penetration testing on their networks, whether it's IT or OT. And we've spoken with a lot of Coast Guard facility inspectors on this, and that could count as a security drill. So again, this is a good way for you guys to begin to understand and bridge that gap between cyber and physical, is doing a drill. And then lastly, exercises. We have to do an annual exercise, and I'll get into that here in a minute, but think about doing a cybersecurity exercise with not just yourself, but what about your neighboring partners or your facilities? If you're tied into the AMSC there, the Area Maritime Security Committee, count that as a cyber exercise, or as your annual exercise, that you have to already do. There's a lot of good channels for a facility to get into with that. And you can, call CISA, or you can call, the Coast Guard and see if there's any regional exercises going on that you guys can participate in on the cyber side. And if you do that, make sure that you include, again, your ITs and your facility management. And I always say facility management because it opens their eyes up to, well, is the FSO and the IT, if they do team together, are they going to need funding for this if we can't get a port security grant? Or, what are things that we should do financially on the budgetary side to make sure that these guys are taken care of, so we prevent a cybersecurity incident or an event. Next slide, please. So with regards to exercises and what it means on the cyber side, for those of you that are FSOs that are tuned in right now, you've probably seen the planning P. You've done your ICS, your incident command structure during real world events or simulations or drills, exercises. And I'm encouraging, or we encourage FSOs, facility personnel, to really take advantage of the planning P, of the incident command system, and apply it to cybersecurity, because that way you can test, what your response is on the ICS side to a cyber incident. There was a facility that I spoke to several years ago that told me, they did have a cyber incident and nobody really knew their place. They didn't really know what to do, but they knew what to do on the physical security side or on the physical incident side with regards to ICS. But he said as soon as they implemented ICS into that cybersecurity event, they immediately, within minutes, everybody knew what to do, and everything flowed really smoothly, and they were actually able to restore everything on a pretty rapid basis because they used the ICS, because it was something they were already familiar with. Again, we've drilled this, we've done it for years, 20 or 30 years, with this stuff. So apply it into your job at the facility with regards to cybersecurity. You'd be surprised how well it works out. And then lastly, I mentioned, have a good notification system set up. Being a emergency manager, I always tell people, do not do the battlefield introduction. You want to avoid that as much as possible. Exercise and drill regularly, because when you do this with cyber, you'll find out, just like the physical side, it's going to become familiar. It's going to become second nature to you. And if you have a complicated cyber incident or an event, whether it's a real world scenario or a simulated one during your drill exercise, use that planning P and avoid those battlefield introductions. And we'll get into that here on the next slide. How do I avoid battlefield introductions? what does the FSO do? After this, webinar, where do you go from here? The FSO, just like any security program, they're the heart, they're the center of a security program. So the FSO is going to lean very heavily on the IT, yes, and the FSO and the IT are going to spread that out. Where do they start? So we'll start there at the upper left in the square here. You see operations. It's just like Marcia said, do training. Do computer-based training with your operations staff, with those that aren't really in your security network or your security pyramid at the facility. So that would be the all others, your process operators, your dock workers. Get them involved. Again, do that 30-second cyber safety moment, or do some online training with them. Play a YouTube video. And then going over there to the right at the top, security personnel. Involve them in drills and exercises. You'd be surprised, for those facilities that may have security personnel at the front gate that are using computer system to log patrols, to log day-to-day tasks. Get them involved in that too. Say, what would you do if you saw a suspicious email come across the system? Or what would you do if you saw a contractor come into the front gate for a visitor and, maybe leave a USB drive up there? Are you going to plug it in? Because if you start getting them involved, they're going to start to help you foster that cyber culture. And then down there at the bottom left, exercises. Again, get involved with your management, because sometimes they're your budgetary people. And that can include your HSSE people, your health, safety, and environmental. It's very important to drag them in on cyber as well, because when you do that, again, it's building that culture of cyber safety, and it's going to help them understand what you're trying to do. And in the end, they're going to start helping you do that too, if they go through the Navic and they understand what their spot is in cybersecurity. And then lastly, on the bottom right, this is probably the most important thing. Being a former FSO, being a prior Coast Guardsman, and understanding both sides of the fence with regulatory and non-regulatory, your most important factor is going to be partnerships. You absolutely cannot do any security program alone. And when it comes to cybersecurity, this is definitely the case. So, I encourage facilities, FSOs, facility personnel to get involved with their Coast Guard-led Area Maritime Security Committee, or the AMSC, in whatever region you're in, or Captain of the Port Zone. InfraGuard is an FBI-led initiative throughout the country that pulls together people from all industries, the restaurant business, the food business, maritime, and they pull everybody together, and it's a really good forum for you to interact with other people in cybersecurity. And to backtrack for a second, AMSC is also your opportunity to interact with the Coast Guard in a non-regulatory means. So if you have questions on cybersecurity, you can show up to an AMSC meeting and maybe get with your facility inspectors and say, hey, what do you expect from my facility from a cyber standpoint? And they'll give you the good non-regulated answer in that forum. And it's very important for you guys to get involved in that. And then lastly, other government agencies that can include emergency management, mutual aid organizations, things like that. Show up to meetings, get involved, ask them what they're doing for cybersecurity, and tell them what you're doing too as a best practice, because maybe you can help each other out. And then lastly, these three very important entities of partnerships will help you do those drills and exercises that we just discussed. Maybe they're hosting one you can participate in, or maybe they've got a good template for you to use for cyber. So don't ever be afraid to reach out to those guys. Thank you, Marcia.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, I'm not going to go too deep into detail on this last one. I know we're coming up on time and want to make sure we have time for questions and announcements. But this last scope of work is really intended for facilities that are more advanced in the cyber risk management process, meaning, okay, you've done your assessment, you've done your plan, you've implemented basic mitigating measures like training, but you're really looking for something that's going to significantly improve your cybersecurity posture. So for that, we recommend you do some kind of pilot to provide you with more network visibility on your OT side of things. So really this consists of installing some kind of technology on the industrial control side of your facility, gathering data for a period of time. We recommend 30 to 60 days during operation. And what that will provide, depending on what kind of technology you're using, is baseline asset inventory, vulnerability analysis, and then just a baseline set of data that shows what your network traffic looks like. And so this is useful for a lot of things. It gives you visibility into these industrial control networks, which is a huge finding that we see. You know, a lot of people have visibility on the IT side, but not the OT side. And so short term, it gives you that initial visibility and inventory, and then long term, you know, if you are looking to set up a 24/7 monitoring system, this will help you give a good idea of how you want that structured out. And the last thing I will say on this is, if you are going to go down this path, make sure that you're properly vetting which technologies you use. You know, these types of scanning tools are very common on the IT side, and you know, have been around a while. On the OT side, not so much, and you have to be careful about what you're using. You can't just use an IT tool on the OT network, because you cannot risk disrupting operations. And not only that, you don't want to even risk slowing down network traffic, because that can also have safety implications. And just quickly to sum up, if you are looking for more information on this topic, we have a bunch of resources on the ABS Group website. We've got some great podcasts and webinars. We have some on the recent Colonial Pipeline attack if you are interested in hearing about that, so I encourage you to go check it out. Okay, Paula, were there any questions for us?
Yes, it looks like we do have a question. What were the MSIBs with cyber information?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? The MSIB what?
What were the MSIBs with cyber information?
Oh, okay, I think just clarifying what exactly those are. So the MSIBs are marine safety bulletins issued by the Coast Guard. And they're really, they are used both to announce, you know, significant events that have happened recently, but really to urge facilities to address these issues that have been identified as of late. And so the ones that we presented were regarding cybersecurity. As Brian mentioned, there's a couple significant ones on SolarWinds, and then the 1821 is the main one for industrial control systems for addressing your OT cybersecurity. So really, they're just announcements from the Coast Guard saying, hey, this is important, take it seriously.
Great. Another question asks, where is the handout section on this platform for accessing the slide deck?
Okay, so yeah, there is a handout section here. I'm not sure that we've uploaded the slides in the handout section for this, but I believe the plan is we'll send it out after the session.
Yeah, we'll post the handouts and the recording from this webinar both to the AAPA website, and I think you guys have offered to do the same to your website as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And those are the only two questions that I'm seeing in the question box.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, and I don't see any in the chat. So so those were the only two questions that I had. Thank you so much for your very insightful presentation, Marcia and Brian. And to our attendees, I hope you feel like you gained some helpful insights. Before you sign off, I hope you'll hang in just a few minutes so I can share some upcoming events and promotions that we have that I think may interest you. So I'm going to share my screen just real quick here. Let me find the button for that. All right. All right, so you should be able to see my screen here. So our convention is coming up. If you liked today's content, we have a lot more of it planned for our annual convention. We've been doing a lot of webinars and virtual meetings throughout this year, in the past year, because of COVID, but we're really excited to be able to meet in person now that people are being vaccinated and restrictions have been lifted, and we hope that many of you will be able to join us. If you aren't able to travel or aren't comfortable, or your company isn't, or your country or state isn't allowing it to travel just yet, we do have virtual component to the convention. The dates are September 26th through the 29th in Austin, Texas. Registration is open, hotel reservations are open. If you are planning on attending in person, we have heard from the hotel that they do expect to sell out. So I would encourage you, if you are planning to attend and you haven't registered or made your hotel reservations, that you might want to start working on that pretty quickly. And you do, if you are going to be staying in our hotel, you do need to make your reservation first. Or you do need to register for the event first in order to do that. So you can find that information on that and register on our website. The URL is aapaustin2021.org. We hope so much to see you there. We have other events coming up this year. Our Port Security Seminar and Expo is taking place very quickly in the next couple weeks, July 14th through the 16th. It is in person in New York City, but there's also a virtual component as well, again, for those who aren't able to travel. It's a hybrid event. Anytime you see that AAPA Anywhere logo, that means there's a virtual component. It's a hybrid event, so you can participate virtually or in person. The Facilities Engineering Seminar and Expo is a AAPA Anywhere event. It's taking place in person in November 2nd through the 4th in Savannah, Georgia. And our Commissioner Seminar is December 7th through 9th. The Executive Management Conference is November 15th through the 19th. And we also have our Latin Congress coming up in November 29th to December 1st in Cartagena, Colombia. So we have lots of events coming up through the rest of the year. I don't know about you, but I'm getting eager and excited to see people in person now that I'm fully vaccinated. So hoping to see many of you coming up in the next few months. We also have a way for you to connect with each other and learn what's going on in the industry in a virtual manner. We have our new AAPA mobile app. It's free to download. It's available on Apple and Android. There are news and Twitter feeds for you to keep up with what's going on in the industry. There's in-app messaging, so you can connect directly with other users. The AAPA Smart Guide is available on there, so you can find contact information for other members. You, of course, have to be a member to access the members and the Smart Guide. There are networking forums, so you can create little communication groups. You can find information on our events in there. If you need any assistance logging in, if you're a member, you can contact Renita Gross. Her email address is rgross@aapa-ports.org. And if you have any questions or need anything, my name again is Paula Gonzalez. My email address is pgonzalez@aapa-ports.org. My phone number is there for you. Feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you about anything regarding AAPA and happy to help. If you are not a member and you would like to be able to present a webinar like ABS Group just did, that's a benefit, a perk of being a member, I'd be happy to speak with you about membership. If you are a member and you want to present a webinar, talk to me. I'm also responsible for co-hosting these webinars and organizing the webinars with the members. So with that said, this concludes our program for today. Thank you for your time and attention, and thanks again to our presenters, Marcia and Brian, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day. Thanks so much, and take care.